It was early spring in a distant land where the winds which passed over the fields either blew down from the mountains or came from across the sea. In this place, in a small village at the foot of the mountains, there lived two old friends. One had a small house and grew vegetables in his field. His name was Hakim. The other, Nadim, lived in an equally modest house nearby where he kept a flock of goats, which each day he took up to graze upon the mountain. Both men, to those who knew no better, might be considered poor, but having all of the things that they required in life, neither of them thought themselves to be so. Each was content with his lot. One afternoon, while Nadim slept beneath a tree, thieves came and stole his goats. Nadim was distraught. Left without a way of earning a living, he shut himself up in his house and remained behind his door for days, cursing his fate. When Hakim realized that he had not seen his friend for some days, he went to the house, where he found him in despair and thus learned of his friend's misfortune. "What shall I do?" asked Nadim. "How may I live now? I have no goats to milk, no meat to sell, no chance to earn my living." Hakim thought for a while. "My friend, we have been friends for many years. I cannot see you suffer like this, so I will give you a half of my field on which you may grow some crops to sell. When you have earned enough money, then you can buy some more goats." Nadim protested. No, you will lose half of your income, and already you work all of the hours of the day to earn what you do, and that is never enough. How can you afford to let me have a half of your field? We are friends, and that is more important than anything in the world. It will help you. But it will take so long for me to earn enough to buy new animals. It does not matter. You are my friend, and that is what matters. So what was said was done. Hakim marked out his field and divided it into two halves. The mountain snow melted. The winds turned warm, and the birds sang from dawn till dusk. The two friends set to digging their halves of the fields and began to think about the seeds they would plant. Nadim, wishing to repay his friend's faith and generosity, worked longer and harder in order to reap a greater harvest. He would be the first of the two to bend his back to the earth, and he was always the last to clean his hoe. One day, Nadim thrust his hoe into the earth and hit something solid. Curious, he dug deeper and saw that it was not a rock, which he had first expected it to be, but an old metal box. Inside he found it to be full of coins, gold coins. He heaved the box up onto his shoulder and took it to his friend's house. He gave it to Hakim. "You see," Nadim said, "fate is kind to you." "Why do you say this, my friend?" "Because fate planted a chest of gold in your field. You are rich, and no longer will you have to work." "But Nadim, the chest belongs not to me, but to you. I did not find it. You did." "It is your field, Hakim." "It was your hoe that found it, your hand that raised it, and your shoulder that carried it here. It belongs to you." "I cannot take any part of this gold, after all you have done for me." "I cannot keep it either, because I did nothing to earn it." Unable to decide what to do with the gold, they went to see the Qadi. He would know what to do. He would know what the right thing would be. The Qadi was sitting on his cushions giving a lesson to 3 students who were training to become lawyers. When he heard what the two friends had to say, he lightly pulled on his beard for a while, then he turned to the young men. "Here is an unusual case. You are scholars in law, and this would be a good time to show what this learning has made of you." The first scholar wasted no time in answering. "The land belongs not to one man nor the other, but to the Sultan. Therefore, the chest and its contents belong to him." The Qadi continued pulling at his beard as he turned to the second student. "This is not so, my friend. Indeed, as the land does not belong to the two who stand here, it also does not belong to the Sultan. It belongs to the one who rules over us all, Allah. So therefore the gold belongs to the Imam. He must have it." The Qadi tugged a little harder on his beard. The third scholar was quiet. "And what do you say?" "Well, I disagree with both of my colleagues. I feel that the issue here is not the prize, but the reason for their indecision. Each of them is unwilling to see the other be worse off than himself. That is a powerful friendship. Therefore, I feel that the friendship should be rewarded, and the treasure should be used to celebrate this." The Qadi had stopped pulling out his beard. "How do you imagine this to be done?" "I think a place where the fruit of friendship could be enjoyed by everyone, not just the Sultan or the Imam, but all. The gold should be used to create a garden of friendship." The Qadi expressed his pleasure in this, and asked Hakim and Nadim if they agreed. They did. Thus it was that the gold was entrusted to the young scholar, to whom they gave the task of travelling to the city to acquire the seeds to plant the garden. The next day, with the blessings of the two friends, he set off. The road was dusty and the journey long. Along the way he came to a caravanserai where the young man was obliged to spend the night. The next day he watched a caravan of camels and mules arrive. On the back of each beast he saw cages. In the cages he saw birds. There were many. They displayed such beautiful colours that it took his breath away. He inquired about them and was told that they were owned by a merchant who was preparing to leave for the Sultan's palace. The young man found him and inquired about the birds. The merchant told him that he was going to sell them to the Sultan. The young man was overcome with pity for the caged birds. "If I was to offer you more than the Sultan would pay for them, would you sell them to me?" "I am a merchant, so of course I would. But, young man, where would you find such an amount? The Sultan is very rich." The scholar produced the chest, which contained far more gold than the merchant could have hoped for. The deal was done. The young man then ran along the caravan, opening the cages. The birds flew up into the clear blue skies and away. He was elated. He could imagine what the two men would say at his compassion. They would surely approve of such an act of kindness. Or would they? And what would the Qadi say? No longer able to go to the city to buy seeds, he turned his eyes to the road back home. Each step that brought him closer to the village took him deeper into doubt. He had been entrusted with a small fortune and a specific task. The fortune was gone, and he had not carried out the task. Furthermore, he had broken the trust of the Qadi and the two old men. Just before he came to the village, he sat down at the foot of a tree and considered his actions. The more he thought about them, the worse he felt. With these thoughts, he curled up on the ground and fell asleep, to be woken by a sound in his ear. He saw the most beautiful of birds standing on his shoulder. In its beak, it was bearing a seed. The young man sat up, and the bird flew away from him. As it did, he realized that he had been surrounded by birds, the birds that he had freed, and many more besides, and each one of them bore a seed in its beak. The young man rose and watched in awe as they took to the sky and flew towards the village where the two friends lived. They gathered in a field, and there they laid the seeds into the earth. Seeds which would in time become the flowers and the trees of the garden that would become known as the Garden of Friendship.